another big year for the US oil majors. It's pushed up the share price of both ExxonMobil and Chevron. Tech earnings bonanza, Apple, Meta and Amazon all report strong quarterly results, but a slump in China sales and the rising investments needed for AI worries Wall Street. Welcome to World Business Report. I'm Davina Gupta. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started with our top story, where the United States' two biggest oil giants, ExxonMobil and Chevron, have reported their earnings for 2023. They've both enjoyed their second biggest profits in a decade, but somewhat off their record profits in 2022. We talk in a bit about what's leading this turnaround, but a look at the last quarter profits first, because ExxonMobil's net earnings were nearly $36 billion, down by over a third on the previous year. And as you can see in the next one, for Chevron's profits, they were $21.4 billion. That's almost down by 40% on the same period in the previous year. But annually, they have shown the second biggest rise in just a decade. So let's go across to Erin Delmore, who's joining us from New York. So Erin, what's actually happening there? What's leading to this dial-up in great earnings for these oil majors?
Well, Davina, as you said, that's a big headline, the second biggest annual profits in a decade. Now, it's not due to prices. Prices were very high in 2022, as many of us acutely remember, and they've been falling since then. Instead, it's thanks to production, specifically production in the U.S.'s own backyard. And now this commitment by these two companies to oil and gas within the United States itself is, of course, bringing in big numbers for them, but it's also bringing more attention onto their commitment to other energy sources, sustainability, and emissions. So as you can imagine, it's a multifaceted conversation. But as far as the market is concerned, numbers are up. We are seeing stock gain for each of these companies this morning on the opening bell. Both are up more than 1%.
And talking about numbers, the other numbers that are up, but not everybody is happy about, is the U.S. job numbers. The figures are out. What can you tell us about that?
Big numbers again. Maybe that's our theme for the day today. We saw 353,000 jobs added in the U.S. in January, and unemployment remained at 3.7%. So think about that for a minute. It's a gain in jobs, more people employed, but your number of unemployed people didn't go down. And Davina, this is the strength of the U.S. labor market. It's been one of the favorable curiosities, you could say, of this recovery from the pandemic. It's been one of the things that's really been buoying the U.S. economy, but it also raises some questions. Specifically, the strength of the labor market is one of the reasons that the Fed has cited on why they're not cutting interest rates, particularly right now. And we did hear Jerome Powell say during the week that the Fed is committed to cutting rates this year, but that if we continue to see strong job growth, evidenced by this report today, that would be a bit slower. And if we began to see the job market suffer a little, weaken, soften, we could see those interest rate cuts come a little bit sooner. And the way that they're related is because interest rates make it easier to borrow money. It's true for me, it's true for a company. And when companies are able to access capital a bit more easily, we tend to see them grow. The converse is also true. That's the relationship you would expect to see. But with interest rates at a 23-year high, haven't seen it yet.
Well, Erin, thanks for explaining all of that. And yes, more worries for the U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell there. But there's one sector where there's been a bit of layoff in the U.S., and that's the tech industry. And now the earnings of Big Three shows, that is Apple, Meta and Amazon, that the quarterly results is seeing a bit of markup after a year of falling sales. Apple, for example, is returning to growth. And in the last 3 months of 2023, it's clear that more and more people are buying its latest iPhone 15 handsets. There's also a lot of buzz around the launch of its Vision Pro headset, which is its biggest release of a new product in almost a decade. But there are pressing challenges for the company. In China, for example, consumers are staying away from these iPhones and going to other brands. Dan Ives is senior equity analyst at Wedbush Securities. And a little earlier, he told me why and what is leading to Apple's return to growth.
I think it's a major step in the right direction. The growth that we're seeing, that upgrade cycle, that in terms of the holiday quarter, but as you talked about, I mean, China's an overhang. It's not roses and champagne for them in Beijing, navigating Huawei and some of the geopolitical, but they've been there before. The install base is 200 million iPhones. We believe they gave massively conservative guidance. I think this is just the start of a renaissance of growth.
We'll return to Dan Ives in just a bit. But second in big tech earnings is Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, that has shown that 2023, that is last year, where it talked about efficiency, has paid off. So basically, there's been more advertising as well and job cuts that we talked about that has worked for the company. The company is also offering a first ever dividend to its shareholders, and it all comes at a time of the 20th birthday of Facebook. Well, it's that old, what can one say? It all started in a dorm room by Mark Zuckerberg and a handful of friends, and now we take a look at how it has evolved with our reporter Joe Tidy.
It all started like this. Facebook, or the Facebook as it was then, launched from Mark Zuckerberg's student digs at Harvard in 2004. Over the years, more and more features have been added and the design slowly tweaked into what it is today. But the impact of the famous blue app was almost instant, and in the last 20 years, it's altered society, politics and business in profound ways. Here are 4 ways that Facebook's changed our world. 1. Facebook was a social media game changer. Other social networks existed like MySpace and Bebo, but Mark Zuckerberg's site really took off. It's less popular than it used to be with young people, but the company insists it is still growing. It's the biggest social network in the world with 2 billion daily users, the most being in India and the US. 2. Facebook made the internet political. It was instrumental in movements like the Arab Spring and has become a key place for campaigning and debate in elections around the world, for good and bad. In 2018, Facebook agreed with the UN report that it said it had failed to prevent its platform from being used to incite offline violence against the Rohingya people in Myanmar. 3. Facebook made personal data valuable and less personal. Facebook proved that collecting our likes and dislikes is extremely lucrative. Facebook's parent company Meta is an advertising giant and takes the lion's share of global digital ad money alongside Google. But it's also proven what can go wrong with all that data collection. Facebook's been fined hundreds of millions of dollars multiple times for mishandling our data, most famously in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. 4. Facebook kick-started Meta's dominance. With the success of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg built an empire. He bought companies like WhatsApp, Instagram, Oculus, and helped them grow. Meta says that more than 3 billion people use at least one of their products every day. This dominance has arguably not come from innovation, but either from buying rivals or copying their ideas. The app's disappearing stories feature, for example, copied Snapchat. Instagram Reels is the company's answer to TikTok, and Threads is an attempt to replace Twitter. And now with the company pushing heavily into AI and the metaverse, who knows what the future holds?
That's the big question, isn't it? But the third in the tech earnings set on Thursday was Amazon, where a bumper holiday season sales has been driving profits for the online retail giant last quarter. The company now wants to push more advertising on its streaming platform as well. It's also hoping to further improve sales of its cloud services that helps other companies to store and manage their data remotely. So we've been talking about this major theme on the show with tech companies of artificial intelligence, and from Apple to Meta to Amazon, all are trying to develop a more advanced generative AI. The question remains, how should the technology be regulated? Today in the European Union, the AI Act is being formally adopted. Kirsten Rulf is partner and associate director at Boston Consulting Group, and she also co-negotiated this legislation in her previous role at the German Federal Chancellery, and earlier asked her to outline the most challenging issues that she faced.
It's truly been a heart-stopping finale for the European AI Act, which has actually been under negotiation for about 3 years, with a fulminant finale in December, a 36-hour historic negotiation. It was almost finished, but then just as this final vote was coming to a close, France, Germany, and also Italy had some reservations exactly on the points that you said, biometric recognition and facial recognition. It seems like now in the final hours before the vote, France has finally found the heart to say yes to the European AI Act. And that might actually signify a new phase now where Europe is actually taking the lead in global AI regulation.
So the EU is doing this, but what's happening here in the UK? Let's find out in other business news that we're talking about. Staying on the subject of jobs, and the governor of the Bank of England has said that AI will not be a mass destroyer of jobs. Andrew Bailey told the BBC that he believes AI technologies have great potential and humans will learn how to work with it. In other news, in France, in a good sign for the economy, the industrial production there has expanded for the second consecutive month in December. The new data out today shows that factory output has increased by better than expected 1.1% in the final month of 2023. Now, a higher factory output means more jobs and consumer spending, which helps the economy. And the main foreign exchange traders in the Nigerian capital Abuja have stopped working as a result of a severe shortage of dollars. The local currency, the naira, recently fell to an all-time low against the dollar, and the head of the Bureau de Change Association has said online speculators were partly to be blamed for the shortage. To Germany now, the CEO of software giant SAP, Christian Klein, is among those warning that far-right politics risk harming Germany's attractiveness to foreign labour and his investment. His remarks come as the anti-immigration AfD party is now running second in national polls. So BBC's Erin Delmore caught up with Christian and began by asking him what his expectations were for 2024.
Around here on the campus, actually you see a lot of people from the UK, but as well from Asia, from the United States, and we need that. We need these people also coming to Germany. So we are completely against any kind of extremism, because we need to have those talents coming to us to innovate, to boost the economy. And that's why it was time indeed to speak up, not only for myself, but for the German economy on its own.
That's all from BBC World Business Report, and you can watch that episode on Talking Business with Erin Delmore through the weekend.